Okay, we are going to continue on with problem C and D for that last example. And we'll see if this works for me this time because it hasn't been. But the denominator of the first fraction is actually a trinomial, so we're going to use x factor to factor that. So I'm going to do -6 on top and 5 on the bottom. So the two numbers I need are going to be 6 and -1. So when I factor here, I'm going to have x plus 6 and x minus 1. Now, bottom of the second fraction is already factored. So when I look at this, I need to find my restrictions before I can do anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and list those, or find those over here. Let's not label it yet. We'll go ahead and do x plus 6 equals 0 and x minus 1 equals 0, and then solve those. So if I subtract 6 from both sides, I get x equals -6, and if I add 1 to both sides, I get x equals 1. Those are my restrictions. I don't have to do x plus 6 twice because it's already there. We don't have to go back and do it again. So that is how we handle our restrictions here. Now, the next thing we need to do is look at our LCM. So I'm going to change some colors here. To find our LCM, I always start with the denominator of the first fraction because no matter what, I have to have the whole thing there. So no matter what happens, this has to be in my common denominator. Then I compare to the next fraction and make sure that's also there. So notice I have an x plus 6 in the denominator of the second fraction, and I have an x plus 6 in my LCM, so I'm good. Okay, this is my goal. This is what I need in the bottom of both my fractions. So if we look, we already have it here for the first one, but in the second one, I am missing that piece, that x minus 1 piece. So I'm going to multiply both the top and the bottom of the fraction by x minus 1. So that means my whole first fraction staying the same. So x plus 6 and x minus 1 on the bottom, x plus 2 on the top. The second fraction, I'm going to go ahead and simplify the numerator. So 3x minus 3 when I distribute. And on the bottom, I now have x plus 6 and x minus 1 because I multiply both of the top and the bottom there. Okay, after I have common denominators, now that these are the same, I can combine like terms. So I'm going to combine 1x plus 3x, so 4x there. And then I have 2 plus -3, which is -1. And my denominator will stay the same. And if I can factor the numerator, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I actually can't do that here, so I'm going to circle it, and I'm done. So my solution is 4x minus 1 over x plus 6, x minus 1. My restrictions are -6 and 1. I'm going to go ahead and move those over here so we have more room when we do the next part. Okay, so here's my restrictions and my LCM. Okay, next problem, I'm going to go ahead and factor the denominators. I actually don't even rewrite the whole problem, I just factor it right here so I can see it. I can even cross that off. Can't factor this. I'm going to find my restrictions, so I'm going to do 2 equals 0, which doesn't matter. I'm going to do b plus 2 equals 0 for the first fraction, and b minus 6 equals 0 for the second fraction. So I get -2 and +6 for my restrictions. Okay, hopefully you're getting to the point where you can do those in your head for the most part. Now for my LCM, I'm going to use the whole first fraction. So I have 2 and b plus 2. And then I'm going to look at the second fraction. Second fraction this time has b minus 6. But I don't have a b minus 6 down there. So I need to add that whole thing there. So I have a b minus 6. So this is what I need to have in the bottom of both my fractions. Okay. So looking at my first fraction, I have 2 and b plus 2. So I have that part. But I don't have b minus 6 in there yet. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply both the top and the bottom by b minus 6. So I get 3b minus 18 over 2 times b plus 2 times b minus 6. For the second fraction, I have b minus 6, but I don't have this whole thing. So I'm going to do times 2b plus 2 and times 2b plus 2 there. So this is really going to be 10, and I'm going to multiply it. Okay, so I get 10b plus 20 there. And then the bottom just has the whole denominator now. Okay, so now that my denominators match, I can go ahead and simplify by combining my like terms on the top. So 3b minus 10b, so 3b minus 10b is negative 7b, and negative 18 minus 20 is negative 38. Okay, and I'm going to bring this down. So my denominator stays the same. And if I can factor this, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I actually cannot, so this is my final answer, and then I have my restrictions of negative 2 and 6. Okay, go ahead and try the next two on your own. Hit pause, because I will do them. And then when you are ready, hit play to check your answers. Okay, I'm just going to leave this up here for a second so you can kind of check my work and see kind of where I did everything there. Number 2, you can actually give me either of these two answers, because when I factor, I can't simplify anything. If you have any questions, step in to see any of the math teachers during Buck Win or before or after school. Otherwise, have a great day.